What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. We are now on step 11. I think this is the fourth week that we've been exploring this step, and we will be continuing on for several more weeks. But one of the ways that I want you to think about how we've changed in working the steps is that when we started this journey, we did not have much self-awareness at all. Now, I believe that when we're in trouble, that we narrow our awareness down so we don't have to feel the incongruence that we feel about not being who we really would like to be. It's called selective inattention. So we don't pay attention to things that are going to make us uncomfortable, that are going to have to, make us look at things about ourselves that we don't want to see. So what starts to happen in the program in terms of, in working the steps, in terms of achieving emotional sobriety, is that we need to start to grow our awareness of ourself and our relationships with others, and our awareness of our relationship to life and our relationship to other people in our life. So one way of looking at what's happening in the steps, it's a systematic, almost like cataract surgery, is you're taking this film off of your eyes so you can start to begin to see yourself and how you're functioning clearly. Now, we talked about the steps that the pivot point in the steps was step 6 and 7. And step 6 and 7 were the moment that we made the decision now to strive to develop our best possible attitude towards life. And up to that point in time, we're developing a lot of awareness of ourselves. We're practicing, self-examination. We're really starting to steep ourselves in honesty and in integrity. And now we take that into steps 8 and 9, where now we take responsibility for things that we've done to hurt people in our past, and we take responsibility to make those situations right. We also looked at our relationship with ourselves in terms of how have we hurt ourselves. We talked about self-hate as part of looking at step 8 in terms of making that list, and how is it that I end up hating myself and have such an adversarial relationship? Well, the work we did there was then taken into step 10, is instead of just practicing that in our past, I talked about it as integrating what we've been learning into the here and now, because it's in the here and now where you're going to discover your recovery. It's in the here and now you're going to discover your emotional sobriety. And so steps 10 and 11, I want you to think of these steps as they're about integration. We are integrating all we've learned in the previous 9 steps into our daily lives. So what we're doing is, the way I wrote about it today, is it's the integration of all our functions. It's the integration of all of what we are. This is a fundamental condition to have a deeper experience of ourselves and our lives. If we don't integrate these things, they're going to do the same thing that our fragmented self did before. We're not going to be able to coordinate them and use them in a very, very effective way. So realizing a depth experience, meaning be able to relate to myself and really have a curiosity about how come I'm reacting this way, or how come that's disturbing me? How come this is going on? And being curious about what I'm doing. And with the idea of how can I now do some of these, discover new possibilities? How can I find a way to now show up different than I've been? Those two things become very necessary in achieving emotional sobriety. And last week I said that prayer is to meditation, which is what step 11 is about, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Now, won't finish that, but prayer is to meditation what focus is, or focusing is, to our awareness. When we point our awareness in the direction of what we're doing and how we're doing it, we amplify our energy and our engagement with our life. It's an amazing thing that happened. So the way I'm thinking about step 11 is that it's a call for being more present in our life. Now, what do we mean by presence? What does it mean to be more present in your life? Well, presence is the quality of being in a situation in which we intend to be as aware and as engaged as we are able to be in this moment and in this circumstance I'm in. I'll repeat that again. So presence is the quality of being in a situation in which we intend to be as aware and as engaged as we are able to be in this moment and in this circumstance. That's what we're doing in step 11. It's learning how to practice this presence in our life that is so necessary in the achievement of emotional sobriety. I have to be present in order to integrate these functions that are so necessary for emotional sobriety. So presence is being here and now in both body, in emotions, in my relationship to you and being aware of that. It's in my thoughts and in every other way that you can possibly think about. Now, there are two sides to being present that are worthy to talk about. One side of being present means that I show up with a willingness to be open to the experience I'm having. We call that accessibility. That I drop my defenses down and I allow myself to be impacted in any way that I'm being impacted so I can understand it. I don't push it away. I allow the disturbance to come in. I allow the feeling to happen. I become completely present to what I'm experiencing. So that accessibility becomes so important in terms of me developing a deeper experience with myself and with what's going on in my life. But that's just one side of the coin. It's an important side of the coin, but there's another side of the coin. And that's where we take what's happening to us and we try to find the words that most accurately describe our experience. So that's expressiveness. So presence involves being accessible to your experience and being able to express and articulate what meaning it has for you and finding those words. This skill that I just described is something that is very important for us to keep honing and developing as we wish to achieve emotional sobriety. Now, what we're going to be doing is I've added another discussant to the meeting tonight. So Dr. Shawn Horn is going to be joining us as an experiment to see how this works out. I've limited myself to just sharing with you guys for about 15 minutes. I'm going to ask each of them to come in and share for 5 minutes, and then we will be opening up the meeting for a discussion. Now, I do want to say this. Next week, things are going to be a little different. My dear friend, Dr. Judy Hollis, is going to be giving a presentation for IDAA, that's International Doctors and Alcoholics Anonymous, and she's going to be giving a talk on, is one program enough? And I thought it would fit well into step 11. So Judy's going to share for the first 20 minutes or so in the meeting next week. And then Thom and I will just be the discussants in that meeting. And then we will go back to this format the week after that. So next week will be Is One Meeting Enough with Dr. Hollis. And then we'll go back to step 11. So enough said from my side. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, my colleagues. Now I get to turn this over to you guys and hear what you'd like to say about the points I've brought up, or anything that reminds you of or inspires you to share about.
Could you repeat it? I didn't hear.
I can go ahead and jump in. It'll be amazing for me to be in 5 minutes. So if I do, I need everyone to give me a kudos. So what I think about when you talk about being present is that for many of us, being present is where the pain was. It was where the trauma was. It was where the darkness was. And so our bodies and our brains learned that being present was dangerous. Being present hurts. And we then develop skills and coping mechanisms to soothe that pain, to soothe that fear. And both our functional and our dysfunctional, or our adaptive and our maladaptive skills, have the same goal, which is to make sure we're okay. It's just that one is doing it in a destructive way and the other one is doing it in a more skilled way. So like people who turn to drugs and alcohol, they're trying to make the pain better. When we go to sobriety, we're trying to make the pain better. So when we don't have skills and we don't have tools, we just default to whatever works. And so in doing this journey of removing ourselves from what we've used to take care of ourselves, it requires that we develop distress tolerance. And that requires that we begin to soothe ourselves in healthy ways. And the first thing that comes to mind is I just want to encourage all of us to not be so afraid of ourselves and to be so afraid it's going to happen, especially when we had difficulty because we were to make sense of something that didn't make sense. We'll blame ourselves. And that's how we cope. So part of learning the new us is that we have to unglue ourselves from the story that others gave us, the words that were given to us, the things that we made agreements with, and be open to a new possibility. But that is really scary because it's the unknown. So first thing I would say is working through that fear, but knowing it's automatic. You're not choosing it. You're not saying, I refuse to let this go, or a lot of people say this, you hold on to the story, you get to keep the story, but we have to understand, again, the biophysiological component of this, which is that we have been conditioned, just like dogs and animals and that are trained to do tricks, that being still is dangerous. Being with ourselves is terrifying. So I can imagine for many saying, to go and learn about ourselves, that could be one of the most terrifying suggestions if we see ourselves as the enemy. So we have to know that we have to let go of being responsible for what other people's actions and behavior. And I thought of that when you said take responsibility, not take responsibility for other people's feelings and actions, but we take responsibility for ours and we let that be their journey, but we do our journey. And I think that's really confusing for a lot of people. So how am I on time? I forgot to watch where I started.
You got about 1 minute, 2 minutes left.
Okay. So, I think instead of being the punishing coach that's saying, tough it out, bite the bullet, get through it, I want to encourage people to transition to the loving coach that is going to mentor you and is going to have compassion for your journey and grace. And it's going to know that, you did the best you could with what you knew. And now we're learning new things and we just got to practice and keep going. Get up, keep going. And that's the magic of being in the moment. But know that both the coach, even the inner critic and all that stuff, they're still trying to make sure you're safe. They're just not doing it in a healthy way. So we're learning new ways. We need not expect ourselves to know them or master them until we have been equipped, we've practiced, and we've mastered them. And every day we get up and we do it again. That's it.
Yay, 5 minutes. Kudos, kudos.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you for that. Missed you last week, Thom. Go for it if you'd like to, man. Yeah.
Well, I can, because I can kind of launch off of some of what Shawn said. I love, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of yourself. We got to stop being so afraid of ourselves. It's like, what do they say? I've heard in the program forever, my mind's a dangerous neighborhood. You don't want to go in there alone. And there's a lot of truth to that. But starting with what Alan was saying, to me, when the word integration, from my perspective of working with it from the way I think of the intrapersonal model of the many in our one head. I think I've told the story before where I had a training workshop participant one time toward the end of my first morning with them, tell me that he thought I was irresponsible because I was fragmenting my clients' personalities, and of course I tell that story because I was very proud of my comeback, which was, well, yeah, but that's good for business, and everybody in the room thought that was funny except for that guy. But we were friends by the end of the day. I do like to say that. But the truth is, he said, you're making people multiple personality disorders. And I said, no, I'm pointing out that we're multiple personalities, and there's no disorder involved here in this particular case. This is a different thing than if you're talking about somebody you think has a dissociative disorder. It's like we are many. We have many. So the ironic twist to this thing is once we accept all of these different parts of ourselves, and we begin to find, and people call it different things. For me, I tend to gravitate more and more toward just the hub of the wheel. Authentic me is, I call, the decision maker. This is the person who is not in control but in charge. And this is a life. It's like what Alan was saying about going on and on and on. This is a step 11 for me, is where we set ourselves up for our lifetime practice that comes from all of this. And so I plan, my awareness will be expanding, will be changing all for the rest of my life now. It's like, so at any given time, I can say, this is the model I have. This is how I see it. And what it is, but the integration is not about things becoming all one. Because when I hear integration, I go, we all got to be one. It's like, no, the integration is, I am aware of my all. I am aware of all the various parts of myself, and I do not have a need for them to be in agreement. They're very different. The smart ass can be over there, the pious one over here, just all kinds of, they can be there. But if I am operating out of my decision maker or the hub of the wheel, then what's happening for me is I am no longer in that, what I call pinball consciousness, because the truth is, by not acknowledging that there's many of me up here, there's many aspects of my personality and my spirit, soul, however you want to say it. It's by not acknowledging that, then that's when I feel like a multiple personality disorder, because I'm going to be popping back and forth. If I can sit, and it's just literally perspective. If I can sit back far enough to where I can see them all, and I can listen and hear and take this stuff in, then I get to make those decisions about what's best for the greater good. And that, to me, is that's what I'm learning with the concept of emotional sobriety, Alan, as you're teaching us this through that lens. Is step 11 is all about the brand new me re-entering the world, ready for my daily practice to expand from here forward.
Yes. Right on. Very well said, Thom.
Thanks.
Very well said.
I took off last week just to think of it.
Yeah.
Well, you did some good prayer and meditation in the last week. I can just see it. It's just shining all over the place.
It was either that or watch television. I can't remember which one it was now, but it's like it was one of those things.
That was so good, Thom. I think you should take every other week off. Man. I really do. So you can reflect and pray and come up with some quality contributions.
Roger's always nudging me out, just a little nudge. It's like,
watch out, watch him, Thom. Keep an eye on.
I'm power hungry. All right.
Yeah. My God, Roger.
You
I've
nailed
been watching my whole career, Roger.
You nailed it. All right. Thank you, guys. Wow. I want to start with what you finished with, Thom, which is, you're going to start living your new life, your new self. And I've been just today and part of yesterday, I started talking with a group I was doing more about, how much time we spend during our day, at least I and most people I know, thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And this is commonly talked about, obviously, about how difficult it is for us to be present-centered with our awareness, how unnatural it feels to learn to become more present-centered. But the slant I was taking on it was, one way of looking at the issue of being present-centered is that as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm breathing and I'm conscious, every moment life gives me a chance to start over. Okay. Every moment life gives me a chance to start anew. And that's why I like the way that you put that a lot. And if I think about that in a certain way, especially if I'm a person, as I am at times, who is very critical and focused on, not forgiving myself and blaming myself for past mistakes and errors in judgment, blaming myself for harm that I've done to myself and others. It's actually quite a liberating notion to me to realize that if I can gradually, through those two tools that Alan mentioned, using what Nathaniel Branden called the searchlight of my consciousness, my ability to focus and direct my consciousness, right? Using that to increase my accessibility, to increase my ability to express myself in a way that I find I'm able to get to the meaning of what I'm wanting to convey. Mm-hmm. Then I can start to have new possibilities in the present moment. But what opens that up is me forgiving myself a lot for the past. Yeah. So I'm not occupied so much by that shame. So I'm not occupied so much by that self-hatred, not occupied so much by that guilt. And those of you who have heard me speak before, I feel like it's very important at times to look at the past, to try to resolve unresolved issues and trauma from the past without question. That's an important piece of growth, an important piece of learning. But there are times where it's also, depending on our individual state of mind and our individual patterns, it's also very helpful to think about, what is my life right now? What are the possibilities for my life right now? What can I be curious about for myself and for others that I care about right now? So that's one piece of what I wanted to mention. The other piece is an idea that I think is powerful in terms of why we fear our own feelings so much, right? Why we fear our fear, why we fear our sadness, our loss, our grief, our depression, our loneliness, our anger, our rage, if that's something we fear in ourselves. And I think a big part of the reason we do that is because we get locked into the frame of reference we had as children when we were going through those experiences, and the intensity level of them was too overwhelming for us. It was too confusing. It was too intense. We certainly did not have the cognitive tools then, only have them now if we're fortunate, okay, in my case at least, to make sense of our experience in a way that was helpful to us. And So when those feelings show up inside of us today, I think we very often tremendously underestimate our ability to tolerate those feelings, as Shawn was just talking about, especially forms of pain that we're experiencing. We don't realize we've grown up at a certain level, is how I think about it. We're still looking through that childhood lens at our experience. And so a big piece of me trying to bring the state of consciousness, the state of awareness to my life that I need today, if I'm gonna be able to step back from the intensity of my feelings, if I'm gonna be able to not be run so much by my emotions, a big part of that is being open to the possibilities that my ability to regulate myself and to make sense of my experience might very likely be much greater than I imagine it to be. Much greater than I imagine it to be. And I just need to remind myself of that many times a day when I'm starting to get overrun or overwhelmed with either thoughts or feelings that are very intense. So those are a couple of points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Listen, fantastic. I like this new format, you guys. Look how tight that was. What did you say, Thom, when I proposed this? This is like writing advertising copy.
Classified ad advertising. Yeah, a lot of young people don't remember classified ads, but when you're getting paying by the word, it's a great writing exercise to see how few words you can use. Yeah.
Well, so what I wanted to say, Raj, because what you're anticipating is where I'm going to go in 2 weeks with this, because we're going to start focusing on a sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for a knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And what I want to tie that into is what you're talking about, is that we tap into that life force that I've talked about before, that force that moves us in the direction of wholeness if we don't get in the way of it. And what happens is that force is who we are when we're first born. You don't have to tell a child to breathe. It wants to breathe because it wants to live. You don't have to tell a child to walk. It wants to walk because it wants to become an ambulatory being.
It has places to go.
It has places to go, people to see, things to do. My goodness gracious me. And what happens is we lose touch with that vital power. You can call that God, whatever you want to call it, but we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks. So nice tie into that, Raj.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. The first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. We're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.